We will begin with approving the minutes from January 14th through February 5th. Those were sent out several days ago. Hope everyone's had a chance to look over those, and I'll accept a motion to approve those minutes. Senator Hill moves. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Murphy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We will open the hearing on Senate Bill 381 with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. Section 1 of Senate Bill 381 would enact a new section of law to require the State Board of Education to develop age and developmentally appropriate curriculum, materials, and guidelines to provide students in kindergarten through 12th grade an understanding of communist and socialist regimes and ideologies. Additionally, each school district would be required to provide instructions to such students on understanding of communist and socialist regimes and ideologies. Section 2 of the bill would amend KSA 723217 to require that all students who enroll in 9th grade in any accredited public, private, or parochial high school on or after July 1, 2026, to pass an examination on American civics. If a student does not pass the exam, the student would not be certified as having completed the course requirements necessary to graduate from high school. Additionally, students may request to take the exam anytime after 7th grade, and the student may take the exam as many times as necessary to pass. The exam would contain 100 questions that are substantially similar to the questions administered to applicants for United States citizenship. The exam may be given as part of the required high school U.S. government course. The bill would authorize the State Board of Education to adopt rules and regulations for the implementation and administration of the exam. Senate Bill 381 contains technical amendments and would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Committee, what questions do we have for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you. We will begin with proponent testimony, and we do have 2 bill hearings today and a total of 11 conferees. So in order to get through both hearings, we will limit oral testimony to 2 minutes. Keep in mind, we do have your written testimony, so during that time you may just want to emphasize the most important points, and we can refer to your written testimony as well. We will hold questions until all of the proponents have testified, and then we will ask questions, and then same for the opponents on each bill. So we will begin with our first proponent, Senator Brad Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and senators. The bill itself is self-explanatory, as what Tamara said, and the importance of the why. If you look at the testimony as proponent by the Cicero Action Group, it gives some pretty daunting statistics as far as the numbers. As far as nationwide, only 19% of Americans under 45 could pass the American Civic Literacy Test. And so the other thing within that is 34% of Americans aged 18 to 29 say they hold a favorable view of communism. 62% say the same of socialism. And they also have said 63% of Gen Z and millennials believe the Declaration of Independence guarantees freedom and equality better than the Communist Manifesto, compared to 95% of those that were in the silent generation. The things that I want to address, as you can read already, what's particularly in the time that I have, but addressing some of the opponents' concerns. We're asking for accountability with this piece of it. It's not an unfunded mandate. There's monies available within curriculum budgets. There's $6.3 billion annually that we're giving to schools. Language concerning IEP disabled students, that's also included in the bill itself and makes provisions for them as well through this process. The state board develops a curriculum, the materials and guidelines, and local control is how it is taught utilizing the Kansas Board of Education curriculum materials. Local school districts determine when and how it is taught. And as one opponent testified, to be engaged, one must test skills, practice developed through sustained engagement, to be educated and know the materials. That bill provides that because they'll start at kindergarten through 12th, kindergarten level as far as that curriculum. And once they do understand the materials, they may choose to become engaged. Under academic freedoms, the teachers determine how they're going to deliver this State Board of Education curriculum. And with any graduation requirement, as far as a, quote, one-time test, they have opportunity, as said, starting at 7th grade to take it as many times as need be. And all courses provide the administration of tests to determine competency. So it's no different than any of those things.
Your time has expired. Do you have a concluding remark?
No. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope to have this passed out favorably by the committee. Thank you.
And you can ask yourself questions here when it's the appropriate time. How's that? Next, we will have Joshua Reynolds, policy analyst from Cicero Action, I believe on WebEx. Are you there, Joshua? Joshua, if you can hear us, we're going to move on. We will come back to you and hopefully get the technical difficulties worked out. So we'll move to Nick Reinecker, private citizen. Is Nick here? Is Mr. Reinecker on WebEx? Okay. We may have more time than we thought here. Erica Sheets, Chair, Johnson County, Kansas Chapter Moms for Liberty. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. It is a delight to be here with you today. We are excited about accountability in schools for teaching accurate U.S. history and accurate history of communism and socialism, and having a civics exam to be able to demonstrate that as a requirement for high school graduation is very important. I would say that we're really excited about the bill, and I would like to make some recommendations on the implementation. So we have concerns about trying to reinvent the wheel on the curriculum and having the State Board of Ed.
It didn't cut off from my phone either. It cut off from my computer. I don't know why.
Whoever is online, can you please mute? Please, thank you. Please proceed, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Gotta love technology, right? We've all been there. Yes, so the way the bill is written right now, it has the State Board of Ed developing curriculum and possibly a test. There is already outstanding curriculum for all pieces of this out there. I provided to Cindy and for the committee for you all to take a look at, both in the President's 1776 report, and Hillsdale College has developed outstanding K through 12 curriculum on communism, socialism, and U.S. history and civics and government. So in terms of materials that are already out there, there's no reason to have the state board doing that. In addition, the state board is heavily working with KSDE and with KNEA, and so these are also the people that have greenlit the information that is in schools right now about this, so it doesn't really make sense to put those people in charge of changing it. So those are some of the implementation comments I would make. The last would be the U.S. civics exam for citizenship. Is, again, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I think our Kansas high school graduates should be at least as knowledgeable and proficient as our naturalized citizens should be. This is not a big ask. There's an English proficiency piece to this test, as well as the government and civics piece that all of our naturalized citizens are required to take. And I have a hard time saying a high school graduate from Kansas from an accredited public school can't take that or is afraid to take that. And so I'd like you to really consider that as well. So in general, we're very supportive. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. We do appreciate it. I'm thinking we might have Joshua Reynolds on So we will go back to Mr. Reynolds from Cicero Action. There you are. Welcome
Thank
to
you very much.
committee.
Thank you so much. I sincerely apologize for the loss of my connection momentarily. Chair Erickson and members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of Senate Bill 381 on behalf of Cicero Action. I'm Joshua Reynolds, an education policy analyst here at Cicero Action. As the Honorable Senator previously mentioned, there is a growing and widespread lack of awareness about the real historical significance of the terms socialism and communism, as well as basic civic literacy. This poses a twin threat to this American republic, where the Founding Fathers established a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which necessitates proper civic and historical education. I thought I would share a few other examples that might illustrate the severity of the problem. For context on what the current U.S. naturalization test requires, there are questions such as, how many senators does each state have? What U.S. war ended slavery? What is the highest court in the United States? It is imperative that Kansas youth be able to answer these questions to behave as informed citizens, voters, and future leaders of the state and of the country. Pertaining to the lack of knowledge surrounding the basic historical facts of communism and socialism, 83% of millennials incorrectly believe the death toll of communism to be less than 100 million. 17% of millennials even believe it to be fewer than 1 million. The Cambodia genocide, which left roughly 1/3 of the population of Cambodia dead under communist leader Pol Pot, is unknown to a majority of Americans, and only 24% of Americans have even heard of the Holodomor, meaning death by starvation in Ukrainian, under which the Soviet communist leader, Joseph Stalin, deliberately starved millions of Ukrainian farmers for daring to dream of independence. It is vital that Kansas students receive the comprehensive historical education necessary to understand these ideologies and how they relate to and contrast with the principles of the American Republic. Senate Bill 381 provides critical remedies to these challenges through its strong accountability mechanism for civic instruction requiring the passage of an American civics exam for graduation. Furthermore, the bill gives the State Board of Education the mandate to develop age-appropriate curriculum on communist and socialist regimes and ideologies.
Mr. Reynolds, your time has expired. Do you have a concluding remark, sir?
Yes, Madam Chair. In the words of James Madison, knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. Thank you for your time and consideration and your stewardship of Kansas schools.
Thank you so much. Next, this may not be on your sheet, committee, but we do have another oral proponent, Kathy Brown. Is Kathy here? There's Kathy. Welcome to committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for your indulgence in having me speak to you today. It is a great joy to see such a bill as this. It's greatly needed because we, the people, are taking back our country. Over the last many years, as our boards of education have waxed more and more leftist and radical, we have seen with dismay the disappearance of what we all grew up with, to wit, civics. Oh, I'm sorry I introduced myself. I'm an attorney at law and a nurse here in Topeka. Apologize. Civics, that was understood to be an essential part of our education, whether public or private. What was it? History class. We pledged allegiance to the flag, sang the Star-Spangled Banner, learned of our nation from 1776 on. We learned of World War II, of Pearl Harbor, Iwo Jima, of Hitler and the death camps, which killed 6 million Jews, but which we and our allies liberated. For many of us, our fathers and uncles fought in that war. It was personal. They risked everything to defend our beloved country. And even though the aforementioned radicalism began to seep into our schools in the 60s, still we knew our proud history. Thomas Paine, George Washington, the signers of the Declaration of Independence, the founders, the Boston Tea Party, our against all odds defeat of the mightiest nation on earth, England. Our brilliant Constitution, written by men under sentence of death the instant they signed it. Then the Civil War, and a little later, the women's suffrage movement, because here in the USA, founded under God, we fix things which need fixing. In these cases, institutionalized racism and sexism, respectively. That is now gone. The good done by the United States of America, not only here at home, but all over the world, could not be adequately recited here. But we knew it, we learned it, and we still see it today because the whole world beats a path to our door, not to any other nation's, ours. That is why this bill is so essential. It speaks of patriotism. When was the last time that was part of the curriculum? Right now, as I testify to all the magnificence of our history, the better part of our population, anybody under 40, knows nothing whatever of these things.
Ms. Brown, your time has expired. Do you have a concluding remark?
Yeah, just 2 sentences, please. Thank you. As we see in this legislative address, our public schools are dominated by the left. They describe Marxism as nirvana. They teach our Judeo-Christian heritage as evil, Satan worship and Islam as diverse. They frame the founders as white supremacists. They're teaching, though, racism now, but against a new color, whiteness. Every place communism has been tried, it has failed
Thank you, ma'am.
catastrophically. Hundreds of millions killed. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. And one last check to see if Mr. Reinecker is online or in the audience. Okay. That concludes our proponent oral testimony. We will open it up for questions. What questions do we have from the committee? Yes, proponent questions. Senator Argabright?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Senator Starnes, is that allowable?
It is.
Did you look at other options for curriculum competencies other than a one-time test? Did you look at other ways to measure that?
No, I didn't, but gave the opportunity for the school board as well as local school districts to determine how they want to teach, if it be to that test portion, to include the curriculum that then would meet that to pass that particular test. So there's lots of different options for the State Board of Education as well as local school districts in making that determination.
Madam Chair, so those districts that may have civic engagement programs, projects, would those qualify in this bill?
Yes. Again, the idea is that the civics is taught based also including the socialist and communist ideologies, so an understanding as such, and then be prepared for those students to then pass that test in the end to prove competency. So yeah, if you choose to have civic projects involved in that helps manifest that and happening, yes, for sure. That's all under your local control.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. But they would still take the test even if they have those components. That was probably my question that I.
Yeah,
okay.
I appreciate that, Senator. And yes, they would all pass the test. Yes, sir.
Additional questions for the proponents? Seeing none, I will draw your attention to proponent written only from Trish O'Neill, concerned citizen, and Debbie Detmer, parent, and move to opponent testimony. There are no neutral. And begin with Mary Sinclair, PhD, on behalf of Vicki Mullins, President, Kansas PTA, on WebEx.
Thank you, Madam
Are you
Chair.
there? Yes, you have 2 minutes. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Mary Sinclair with Kansas Volunteer Parent and Teacher Association. Our main concerns with this bill center around the conflict with the informed governance and authority of state and locally elected school boards and the educational expertise from our state and local, from our state department and local districts. Kansas PTA raises 2 questions of concerns. The first is really directed towards how this overlaps with existing educational standards that reflect decades of work and stakeholder input that have strengthened our state standards over the last 40 years at least, and have been adopted by the State Board of Education. And then the other question really is, where does this proposed citizenship test graduation requirement come from? Is this really a Kansas issue particularly when our state board established a task force to conduct a really thorough review of our Kansas high school graduation requirements. And that task force did not recommend the adoption of a citizenship test. So I'll let our questions stand with that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Next, we have Leah Fleiter, Assistant Executive Director of Advocacy for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to be back. Can you hear me okay? To be back in committee today, appearing in opposition to Senate Bill 181, always echoing our legislative policy on local control by the State Board of Ed and the local boards of education, and I have reproduced that for you in my written testimony. I would like to talk a little bit about the Kansas public schools that we know and whose boards we represent. We have thousands of Kansas students and families who are military connected. Those are families who understand patriotism at the deepest level because those parents are willing every day to be prepared to sacrifice their lives for our great country. That's patriotism from the cradle, right? I know in Manhattan, where I live, we have a huge Veterans Day parade that involves the participation of, I think, around 400 public school students as well as their military families. I know that there is an American flag in front of every public school in this state, and I would imagine most private schools as well. And we say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. You have probably noticed that over the course of the session, even though it's only February, we've had hordes of civically engaged students, public and private schools, in our buildings. So we would ask you to reject this bill, and I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have one more oral opponent, and then we will open it up for questions. Tim Graham, Director of Government Relations and Legislative Affairs from the Kansas National Education Association. Welcome.
Chairman Erickson, members of the committee. I am Tim Graham. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Kansas NEA. We're the largest teachers union in Kansas. I'm going to just jump right into local control. And I'm going to just tell you, I'm as sick of uttering the phrase local control as you guys probably are of hearing it. Nevertheless, this is the argument against Senate Bill 381. We are not suggesting that the legislature lacks the legal authority to weigh in on subject matter taught in schools. As a matter of fact, if you go and read the statutes allow, or the statutes have been created allowing the legislature to actually weigh in on subject matter. But this goes way too far. Just because you have the authority to get into these statutes doesn't mean that it's prudent. Senate Bill 381 moves beyond setting subject matter distinction and directs districts to provide specific instruction on communist and socialist regimes and ideologies across grades K through 12. Decisions about specific curriculum mandates like this, particularly when many of these concepts are already being taught in schools, traditionally belong at the local level. Additionally, conditioning graduation on a passage of a single civics examination introduces a high-stakes requirement that is disconnected from classroom instruction and educator-led practices. Back to local control. Yes, the concept is always invoked up here. And what I found out with local control, it's really easy to cite local control when it's for you, and it's really easy to ignore it when it doesn't add up in your argument. So what we're saying is when you guys decide to get into these decisions that are traditionally left to the locals, because that's the ideal place for them to take place. If you're going to get into that, then give a compelling reason why you should do that. I don't think Senate Bill 381 is a compelling reason, and I don't think it addresses anything that we need to be worried about in schools. Thank you for your time.
Right on time. Good job. Committee, that concludes our opponent testimony. Are there questions for the opponents of the bill? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Leah. So I appreciate your sharing in your testimony about the graduation requirements, and I'm looking at that, and under social science, I see world history, U.S. history 1 and 2, or U.S. history KSU or AP U.S. history, American government, KSU American government, AP government and politics, and then social studies elective. So we've got right there 3 credits, correct?
Yes, Senator.
As part of graduation requirements
In Manhattan High School, yes.
in Manhattan. And so is there anything that's in this bill that, I mean, I don't have the curricula
Right.
here in front of me, but is there anything in this bill that it looks like that wouldn't be covered or touched on within the curriculum, as an example of Manhattan that's already being offered?
I'm sorry, could you say
Is
the
there, well, when I look at what the Manhattan School District has as
right, yes.
course requirements, credit requirements towards graduation, when it's set, you know, here, talking about, although this is high school, not kindergarten, but when it comes to credits, it seems that this curriculum is, without looking at the details, is covering world history, it's covering U.S. history, it's covering American government. I don't know, I think the words communism and socialism might get mentioned within that curriculum.
My understanding of how those upper level courses are taught at the high school level is that there are discussions of decisions have consequences, and also about movements, political movements. And I think we would all agree that any high school class that didn't talk about the Holocaust or, you know, the Ukraine famine, that's just inconceivable. And so I think we're both getting at that it's covered, and the teachers have the ability and the competency to cover that, as is already described in graduation standards. Is that what you were trying to get at?
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, Madam Chair, so when it says on page 1, line 29, that any student who does not satisfactorily pass such examination shall not be certified as having completed the course requirements necessary for graduation for high school. So would you interpret this that that's meaning that they have to have another credit?
You know, that's not clear to me, Senator. What that indicates to me when I'm reading that is that this is something that's an additional test on top of all of the credits, and you might have young Leah Fleiter, who is a 4.0 student because she's a real nerd and everything, but then she is prohibited from graduating from high school unless she passes a civics test that's been dictated by the state. It has nothing to do with my academic eligibility or perhaps my preparation for career after high school, but there's an arbitrary decision by the state that frankly interferes with parental rights that says, oh, sorry, you might be a 4.0 or 3.8 student, but you're not allowed to graduate from high school unless you pass this arbitrary test. Which maybe I could, you know, maybe I'm a smart kid and I could pass it, but maybe I think that that's just not, the state doesn't need to tell me how to be a patriot.
Thank you.
Senator Starnes.
Thank you. And to address that, I just want to ask then, so if these students already have this within their curriculums, can they pass the test?
I don't know, Senator. I know you've heard some things today, but I've not heard any references to actual Kansas students.
Okay? Because that's a concern.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, and that is foremost that they are prepared to pass this test for American citizenship, to be able to be engaged in American citizenship, and especially on our 250th birthday as a country, that we continue with patriotism and an understanding. So I guess back to the question I have, from 7th grade through 12th grade, multiple times to pass the test. So to say that this was a one-time high-stakes test I don't buy it. When they have all these opportunities to be able to take this test over time, including for those that have IEPs, disabled students, et cetera, those are all included within that. So I guess my question again is, if they're all taking these curriculums, can they pass the test?
Respectfully, Senator, if I may circle back to what you said, I will acknowledge that there's more than one chance to take the test, but it's still a very high stakes test because it keeps you from graduating from high school. I don't know the concordance between state standards and the civics test, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I mean, there's high stakes tests all the way through.
They don't keep you from graduating from high school.
Yes, they do. Because if I don't meet the standards in a math to be able to pass the course, I don't get to graduate, if that's a requirement for graduation. So it's all across the curriculum that there are tests that you must prove competency. So what we're asking for is accountability on the money we're investing to ensure that there is competency proven. That's my point.
Thank you. May I just, one thing. Just that the accountability rests with, as you know, as a former superintendent, the local voters who elect the school board and also who elect the State Board of Education. And I would ask that, you know, we consider what is the message that we're sending, that we're dictating a citizenship test that none of us have, at least that I know of, have been forced to take ourselves.
Okay, we're going to move quickly. We have a few questions, so if you can just keep it to one and short and keep responses short so we can get through these. Senator Shane, then Murphy, then Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was stated by one of the opponents that there's been a 40-year history kind of building curriculum and momentum, which it's an interesting correlation to the rise of anti-Americanism and the rise of favorable views of communism and socialism in the United States. Now, although high school for me was almost 20 years ago, I want to talk to some of the things that were true in my American history training and civics training. I was taught that Nazism was a manifestation of the political right, when Nazism is quite literally National Socialism was the party. I was taught in one of my history classes, our only history text was A People's History of the United States, the most distorted view of American history probably that's ever been written in the United States. And in one of my history books, there's a chapter, I distinctly remember this, Ronald Reagan, the worst American president. And these are in the texts that are within our high school. And to say that, yeah, we have courses in American history, that's true, but the content that is being taught is completely un-American. And this rise of anti-Americanism, quite frankly, is fomented and breeded in our K-12 institutions. And so to the point about local control went out the door when, unfortunately, maybe not every single Kansas public school, but public schools across the country have been used to foment anti-Americanism. And it's really, really tragic. But I can't imagine in 20 years that it's gotten better. It doesn't seem that anti-Americanism has gotten better. And so to me, this is of clear interest
Is this a question?
to the legislature. No. Sorry, it's a bit more of a statement, and I'm happy to have you address it. But quite frankly, these are all very real things that are experienced as of 20 years ago. I can't even imagine what it looks like today.
Would you care to respond, Ms. Flager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would imagine that a textbook 20 years ago is probably quite a bit different from a textbook that's being used today. And to state, as you have, that Kansas public schools are what you say they are, frankly, sir, is offensive.
Okay, we shall move on. Senator Murphy, then Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, probably not really a question, but I do find it really, I'd say it's disturbing that we do not expect our kids to have a civic, pass a civics test, but we expect our new citizens to. And we equate going to parades and having a flag in our classrooms to being knowledgeable, and it's just not. If that worked, when people became citizens, they would go on a parade and salute a flag. It'd be done.
I will give you a chance to respond, and I will also ask, I'm hearing feedback from the audience. We do not allow that, so please remain quiet, and I will give Ms. Slider a chance to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. I think my response to that would be that we don't require students to pass a citizenship test who have gone through the K-12 system and are natural citizens because they have learned the citizenship content throughout their education.
Final question. I am so sorry. I know we have additional questions. We can take those offline, but we do have another hearing we need to get to. So we will finish with Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I had two questions, but I will only ask one. And I feel really old because Senator Shane was talking about high school 20 years ago, and my college was 30 years ago. But this has been a very interesting hearing. Yet just yesterday, I had high school students in my office talking about their APUSH exams and government. I am a proud parent of two kids who graduated or will graduate from college a semester early because of the exemplary education that they got. And as a mother who looked at what they were learning in government and U.S. history, I am not aware that this was going. I feel I have two very patriotic sons. But my question is not going to be for you, Leah. You can sit down. It is, I'm going to phone a friend with Frank Harwood. What are our current education standards for graduation, if we could get that?
Dr. Harwood, would you mind addressing that? I know you were not a conferee, but would you mind addressing that?
He's never going to attend the committee ever again.
Thank you, Dr. Harwood.
I mean, so I will not be able to recite them all, but in this area, a student has to pass a class in American government and American history specifically, and then typically there are world history requirements as well. So just because we looked at this before, communism and socialism are addressed in the state standards, I think 7 through 12. They are not addressed specifically K through 6. Mostly the social studies standards are there about knowing where you're from and your place, and it doesn't get into economic and political ideology or plans. So I'm not sure how age appropriate too much about communism is in kindergarten, but there are those parts where you start talking about actually about U.S. history starts much younger than that, but specifically for high school graduation, U.S. government and American history are both required.
Thank you for that. And I am very engaged in my communities in the civic SPE and all of this. And I think a lot of our young people are exemplary in this. They're doing a great job, and they are creating those critical thinking skills they have, and they are true patriots for our country. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you to everyone for your comments and your testimony. We will have to leave this there on that, but we do have opponent written only from Thomas Barker, educator, public school parent, Susan Willis, government liaison for Wichita Public Schools, and Kathy Hopkins and Burl New, legislative liaisons for the Kansas State Board of Education. With that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 381 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 384 with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 384 would amend two provisions in the Coalition of Innovative Districts Act. Currently, state law provides that school districts may apply to the State Board of Education for authority to operate as a public innovative district by December 1st. And within 90 days from the date of the application is submitted, the State Board is required to review that application and approve or deny within that 90-day period. Section 1 of Senate Bill 384 would move the deadline for those applications to be submitted from December 1st to May 1st. Additionally, Section 1 would reduce the State Board's application review period from 90 days to 30 days. Additionally, current law does provide that the Coalition of Innovative Districts Act requires approval from the Coalition Board to operate as a public innovative district. The Coalition Board is currently required to meet within 30 days of a request for approval for the purpose of approving or denying such request. Section 2 of the bill on page 3 would provide that if the coalition board does not approve or deny a request for approval within 30 days, the request would be deemed approved. I will note that on page 3, in line 28, it does read, if the coalition does not approve. It should say if the coalition board, the word board there is missing, so if the committee does work this bill, I would request that you consider putting in the word board there after coalition. Senate Bill 384 makes technical amendments to existing law and would take effect upon publication in the Kansas Register.
Thank you. Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you, Tamara. We will move to proponent testimony. And again, 2 minutes, please, and begin with Troy Pitch, Superintendent of Wabaunsee County. Welcome to committee.
Chairperson Erickson and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I'll be brief since you've already received my written testimony. My name is Dr. Troy Pitch. I'm the Superintendent of Schools at USD 329 Wabaunsee. We are a small rural district of about 400 students. Our district consistently performs above state averages, not because we have greater resources, but because we lead with intention and we operate under decisive decision-making processes when opportunities arise. Senate Bill 384 is about operational reality. Right now, the December 1 application deadline forces rural districts to commit to innovation before we know our financial budget, before we know our staffing picture, and before local experts can realistically commit to teaching. May 1 aligns with how schools actually function. Regarding the language that reduces the approval wait time to 30 days, in my district, we are building a high-quality CTE pathway that involves plumbing and electrical. The barrier isn't vision, the barrier is timing and process. When I identify a master tradesman in May, I cannot ask that person who is running a business to wait up to 90 days for the state to decide whether we can move forward or not. If that approval drifts into August, that expert takes another contract, and our students lose a year of hands-on learning. The 30-day deemed approval provision is not about weakening oversight. It's about preventing administrative delay from functioning as a denial for student opportunity. Local boards are accountable to their communities. We should be trusted to move at the speed of our students. Senate Bill 384 doesn't remove guardrails. It simply removes friction, and I respectfully ask for your favorable consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. We do have one other proponent, and then we will open it up for questions. And we have Dr. Tracy Frederick, Executive Director, Kansas School Board Resource Center. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair Erickson and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a proponent testimony in support of Senate Bill 384. I am, as you mentioned, Dr. Tracy Frederick, Director of Kansas School Board Resource Center, and I speak as that in that role for the Kansas School Board Resource Center, but also for Kansas school board members and superintendents. When this was enacted, student achievement needed to be addressed. That was obvious, and this was one of the ways in which that could be addressed. The outstanding opportunity was recognized by the Kansas Department of Education as a chance for districts to employ new innovative techniques and have relief from regulations that hinder teachers from improving and implementing the innovations. Now we have reached a state of urgency. The situation has declined. Kansas students show persistent decline in student proficiency and foundational skills, particularly in English language and math. There are those districts who are working hard in that direction, but it's a bit of an uphill climb for all of the regulations that they have. So they do it with the continued burden of regulations that distract from their focus and energy from academic improvement. We support Senate Bill 384 to move the application deadline from December 1 to May 1, just as Dr. Pitch mentioned, when they know their budget, they know their staffing considerations, and they're able to plan. Without this revision, districts will lose another year in the opportunity to implement best practices. Teachers are frustrated, we have been told, of having to divert precious time from teaching to comply with unproductive restrictions and regulations. Innovative districts are excused from some of those, allowing teachers and administrators to focus on the district's purpose of improving student outcomes. We support this requirement and the district's applications be deemed approved if they are neither approved or denied within 30 days, because the districts need time and they need the opportunity to be proactive in their planning and their implementation. The urgency of this cannot be overstated, and the opportunity to implement best practices and proven innovations, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the appropriate time is now. That concludes our proponent testimony. So are there questions for the proponents? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a question for Dr. Tracy Frederick, who was just up here. I was just wondering, when you spoke in support of this, and the change about the state board approving or denying the application within 30 days, I'm just curious, is there any place within here that talks about if it's, I mean, it seems like maybe it's not necessary, but that it's a complete application? I mean, it seems that
Well, what you will see in this bill is that this is a compliance issue. So you would almost think about it, I would think about it almost like a rubric. Yes, you meet it. No, you don't. Because this bill says if they are in compliance, then they would be approved.
Okay, I see that now on page 1.
Does that help you with your
Yes, it
question?
does. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for your testimonies. And being the former superintendent of Wabunsee School District, I'm just darn proud of them. Tell you what, they're doing a great job and doing a lot of great things. So, and obviously with vocational programming, the need, and it also is in a position that's high demand, high wages, and high opportunity for jobs. So, and as mentioned by Dr. Pitch, it stays local. So thank you.
I'm sure that might have something to do with the foundation you laid when you were superintendent. I'll say it because I know you're thinking it. So there we go. So thank you. Any other questions for the proponents? Senator Arkwright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Dr. Pish. So having a date mentioned, is that not problematic all the way around? When you're in a rural area and you find somebody qualified, you want to get them.
That is correct.
So maybe there's another piece that I'm not aware of, but maybe that's my question. Why have a date and not just a deadline of when you meet the criteria, you have X amount of days to put it in front of the?
I think that's a courtesy to the system so that they can expect in a certain time a deadline for applications and make room in their agendas to handle those applications in a reasonable amount of time.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's probably shouldn't ask that of you, but that's just my mind thinking about availability of people, and any date could be problematic on that topic.
We don't have a lot to choose from, and so when the opportunity arises, we need to strike when the iron's hot.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we will need to move on. We do have one oral opponent, Leah Fleiter, again, Assistant Director of Advocacy, Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Glad to be back, as always, representing the Kansas Association of School Boards, which represents over 330 local boards of education, special ed interlocals, community colleges, and technical colleges across Kansas. You have my testimony, so I'm going to skip to page 2 to talk about our major concerns with this. We have not heard from our members that they have any kind of concern with the current timelines around the Innovative School District statute. We go around the state every summer and fall and visit with our members, and this has, in the time that I have worked at KASB since 2016, this has never risen to the top as a legislative priority. So would just note that. And honestly, Madam Chair, we would like to call out what we think is actually the unspoken agenda behind the bill, and that it's a first step toward loosening regulations in order to open the door wider in Kansas to a charter school sector that in other states has operated without sufficient guardrails and accountability, and ultimately that harms public education through fraud, waste, abuse, and poor academic outcomes. So we would say that innovation and accountability are not competing values, they're actually mutually reinforcing, and if any changes are contemplated, they should maintain affirmative approval, require complete applications before the clock starts, and ensure meaningful public education prior to any decision. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. How'd I do on time?
You did wonderful, and you are the sole oral opponent. I will note that there is opponent written only from Kathy Hopkins and Burl New, legislative liaisons from the Kansas Board of Education. And with that, we'll open it up with questions. And I guess I'll just start because you said something that piqued my interest. So moving the deadline from December 1st to May 1st, can you explain to me how you think that opens the door to charter schools?
Because it would say that if the board didn't approve that application within that time, if it does not take action on an application, it automatically is approved. And so that inaction means it's approved.
But a board could deny it, so therefore it wouldn't
Well,
open
it
the
has
door.
to go
Is
to
that-
the State Board of Ed, and they only meet once a month. And this is saying that if the board applies to the State Board of Ed and they don't circle back around to it within that prescribed amount of time, it's automatically considered approved, even though the State Board of Education hasn't had a chance to approve that. At least that's my understanding for the first two boards that would apply for the innovative school designation.
Do we have other questions for our opponent? Seeing none, thank you
Madam
so much for being here. And thank you to all our conferees today. Appreciate you being here and taking time to share your thoughts with us. That concludes our business for today. Committee, we are adjourned.